Hi there, and welcome to our Channel Features webcast, How to Boost Your Business with a White Label UCaaS, sponsored by SkySwitch. If you have any technical difficulties during today's session, please press the Help widget on your player console to receive assistance in solving common issues. If at any time you are having audio difficulties or issues with the advancing of the slides, please hit your F5 key to refresh your webcast console. Today's web seminar is being recorded and will be available on demand for 12 months starting tomorrow. You will receive an email when it is ready. Please feel free to submit any questions you may have for our speakers today in the Q&A widget on your screen. With that, the floor is yours, John.
Okay, thank you. I hope we are all being able to be heard, and we're ready to start. So thank you all for coming. Good afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you're calling in from. My name is John Arnold, and I'm an independent technology analyst. I have been covering collaboration and communication technologies for a long time. So we've seen a lot of things come and go, and this particular trend of UCaaS is probably the most important opportunity, I think, facing most people in the channel these days, and certainly for businesses as they migrate to the cloud. And that's the ground we're going to cover today. So I will just do a quick introduction here of the speakers' names, as you can see on the slides, both from, so Ethan Farlow from ComTech and Sean Breeden from SkySwitch, and they'll introduce themselves a little bit more when they join the conversation. So we're going to start things off with myself doing a presentation of just some high-level issues to kind of set the table for the conversation we're all going to have. So I'm going to run through some slides for a few minutes here, and then I'll bring Ethan and Sean into the conversation, and we'll get things going. As mentioned, this is a listen-only setup today, but you're welcome to submit questions in the queue anytime, and we'll kind of curate those as we go, and then we'll come to more of a Q&A towards the end, guys, but unless something really pressing comes up, we may take those as they come. But we'll have plenty of time for questions, and let's get going. So here's what we're going to talk about over the next few minutes. I've got 3 quick slides here to show you, and this should really kind of give you some food for thought for what's important. And I'm trying to take everything into consideration here, and what I mean by that is the companies who provide the solutions, in this case, someone like SkySwitch, then of course the channels who are bringing these opportunities to market, and of course then the end customer, right? Your customers out there. So we have to think about what's important to them as well. So thinking of the channel, key trends impacting your business. I'm sure these are all pretty familiar, right? But they're important. So let's talk first about, the channel, but first the business, your end customers, right? So what's happening in terms of trends? So first and foremost, because we are in the communications space, it's the overall evolution of voice technology from circuit to packet. And of course, in layman's terms, that means going from TDM to VoIP, which should be familiar to just about everybody by now. But you know, VoIP has been in the market almost 30 years, and it still has a long way to go to replace legacy telephony. So this is an ongoing evolution, and a lot of businesses are still relying on their legacy circuit switched telephony service. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you've got to look at the bigger picture too. Communications apps are now integrated and not standalone. And this takes the conversation from talking about telephony systems to unified communications and the cloud variation of that, UCaaS, right? Because now we have these capabilities of bringing telephony out from its kind of island, right, where it just does its own thing, dedicated network, etc., to now an integrated mode that adds into other things that make up UCaaS as we know it. The pandemic, which we are hopefully mostly through at this point, right, it's accelerated the migration from prem to cloud. I think we all know that. It's been actually a very good story in its own way for the UCaaS space and for other applications like contact center as a service to go down this path of cloud. We've got the rise of SaaS, right? Software as a service, this model for communications offerings. When you can switch from CapEx, financially intensive investments to OPEX, which can be very easy to budget for, it opens up the door for a lot more opportunities to explore new technologies and new ways of doing things. And finally, you know what? There's the rate of change today. Not only is it constant, but it's faster, and the stakes are getting higher as new technologies keep coming. We won't talk about things like AI or virtual reality today, but those are kind of like the next chapters. A lot of businesses are still, just worried about telephony and phone systems, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there is an ongoing cycle of innovation with technology, and we have to be mindful of that. And businesses generally, especially smaller businesses, really don't have the resources to keep up with all of that. So there's got to be a solution, and that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, the next slide here. Key pain points for your customers because of those trends, right? The existing tools they've been using for all this time really can't adapt to today's needs. And we could talk all day about what those changing needs are, but we all know that. It's a pain point. So that's opportunity, obviously, for the channel. Businesses who have stuck with this model too long are starting to fall behind their competitors because they've already gone down this path. And it should be painfully obvious which businesses are ahead of the curve and which are behind, but it's becoming enough of an issue when it starts costing you customers and sales and market share, profits, all those things. It becomes more of a strategic issue than just a technology issue. As I kind of hinted at before, lack of IT capabilities to modernize. So that's a pain point that, what these guys here after me are going to talk about is where the cloud comes in to give people a quick kind of on-ramp to get their businesses up to speed with this. Financial pressures, right? A lot of issues here around cost certainty, reducing your spend on all kinds of things. And it's usually with telephony, it's not until you take a close look at your phone bills do you realize just how much you're spending on legacy telephony. A lot of opportunity to trim there. And again, UCaaS comes in and tells a good story here. And finally, yes, coming out again of that pandemic environment, how do you support that distributed workforce? Hybrid is kind of becoming the way to go now, and businesses of all sizes have to adapt to this. And that's going to be tough to do if you stick with prem-based legacy technologies. Okay, so what are the opportunities? And this is what we'll talk about next when Sean and Ethan take the floor. So a few things to think about here. So first, yes, UCaaS, again, unified communications as a service if it's new to you, right? It addresses many of these pain points, not all of them, and it doesn't have to, but it covers enough ground that you can pretty quickly connect the dots to say, hey, going down this path is going to make a lot of these things better in ways that you probably can't do otherwise. You've got speed to market issues. I mentioned about falling behind your competitors and the whole FOMO thing, right? Fear of missing out. Well, when you bring white label turnkey solutions to marketplace, you're not waiting months, right, or quarters to get this stuff up and running. You can get it up and running in days or maybe a few weeks tops, but that speed to market is a really important issue. Finding the right partner, of course, that's always an opportunity, but when you have that partner, your chances of scaling the business go way up because not only can you get to market faster, right, but with a cloud-based platform that scales, you can now address a bigger pool of customers, more of them. Go after bigger customers, growing your business instead of maintaining it, right? And then as you establish yourself as a provider of these services to your customers, you become a trusted partner now to offer other cloud services like contact center as a service, like CPaaS, like managed security, et cetera, right? And then finally, when you're thinking long-term, bigger picture, how do you strengthen your book of business when you have this MRR model in place with a lot of upside with UCaaS? Now it stabilizes your cash flow and, of course, gets you thinking about future exit. Now you've got a book of business that has some sustainable value and has pretty good long-term potential. Okay, I think that takes us to my set. And now I'm going to have Sean and Ethan come on, introduce yourselves a bit more, and you will do your thing. And we will come back and take our questions a little later. Over to you guys.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Yeah, my name is Sean Breeden. I'm the channel director here at SkySwitch. My job is to bring on new partners at SkySwitch, and then work with our partners and help them grow. Whether it's vertical specific or working in smaller industries or larger industries, the goal is not to only bring on new partners, but it's also to help them grow. Ethan?
Yeah, so I'm Ethan with ComTech. We're primarily an MSP, managed service provider, so outsourced IT department. That's what we started as many years ago. We're based in the middle of North Carolina, but we added VoIP and UCaaS, I guess 6 or 8 years ago, something like that now. And we added it honestly, for a lot of the reasons that John described, which was build the book of business. And a big thing here is, at least for me, is adding other services that we could add with the managed security that we provide, that sort of thing. Again, just rounding out our entire offering. And if I have to say so, it is easy, or easier than you would think.
Exactly. And then we'll just jump right into things here. So, how can reselling UCaaS enhance your profitability? Well, as we all know, and John alluded to, the work from anywhere movement is in full swing. As we just look at some quick numbers here, some market analysts predict the industry will generate $87.2 billion by 2031. So again, we may not be in the infancy. VoIP has been here for 30 years. We're definitely not in the infancy, but there's still a lot to grow. So plenty of upside if you decide to get into this space, as well as adding on and trying to own as many other things as you can with your customers' IT spend.
Yeah, one thing I'll add there, Sean, I just want to mention, I've heard a little bit of mixed reviews of some sort, where people feel like they maybe have missed the boat on offering VoIP services, that sort of thing, because people are now coming back to the office. You hear that. At least from our perspective, they are. Some of them are now that, as John mentioned, hopefully COVID's behind us. But people are coming back into the office a little bit more. But I am seeing at least a lot of our clients are using the ability to work from home some throughout the week. That flexibility, they're using that as a very good hiring piece, because that's a benefit. Some companies are saying, no, you absolutely have to come back into the office. I get both sides, but I just wanted to mention, I think being flexible enough and having something like this to be able to work from home or back in the office is a good idea.
Gotcha. Yeah, good point there, Ethan. And I guess, that kind of will lead me to one of my first questions has VoIP quality improved over the years from when you first got into it? Were there challenges to where we are today? I mean, is the quality of voice, is that a thing of the past?
Yeah, so it's gotten better. I'm not going to say it's a thing of the past, because you're still dealing with the internet. You're still dealing with, depending on, there's so many different variables, how good your Wi-Fi is, how good your networking is, if you're on cell service, there's lots of different variables there. Mm-hmm. But the good news is it has came a very long way. And on top of that, we have thousands and thousands of endpoints out there. And one of our calls that used to happen all the time was I had a call quality problem. It doesn't happen anywhere near as often. But the thing that I would add to that, that's super, super critical for anyone on the call that is thinking about selling UCaaS, is in the previous years, if somebody called the phone company and said, hey, I've got bad call quality, I had this call at 10 a.m., whatever it may be, the phone company, with a traditional phone system, it says, okay, we can look at the line and we can see what's going on. The good news is with something like this, you can go back to that particular call and look at the data from that call itself, the signal and that sort of thing. So you have a lot more data to look at. So long story short, the call quality has definitely gotten better. And I don't even honestly consider it now. When we go to sell it, I don't consider it. As long as they have good internet, I don't consider it. And the second thing is I encourage clients, if you do have problems, we're able to dig very deep into those problems and figure out exactly where it's at. And even better than that, we don't have to roll a truck to do it 9 times out of 10. We don't have to send a technician on site to test a line or something like that.
True. Yep. That saves a lot of time on the back end, not having to roll those trucks out. Now, when it comes to security, is that still a concern when you're going out there and you're rolling out VoIP, Ethan?
Yeah. So for us, it's not. And now a piece of that comes from our MSP background. So we do heavily invest in our security and that side. But in the grand scheme of things, the phones are these days, they're nothing more than a computer. I mean, they're just a basic computer. That's all they are.
Node's a node, right?
Exactly.
IP's IP.
Yep, exactly. There are ways that you can set things up, whether that's VLAN, whether that's you can set up certain things back to your white label provider to say, I only am going to allow traffic from this location to that location. There's things like that, and it's really not tricky. It's not a problem. We do have from time to time, we'll have somebody mention security, and we just go into these things that we do, and again, partner with a white label provider like SkySwitch to do that, just make it as secure as possible. So security really isn't that big of a deal anymore, if you explain it and you set things up properly. I don't want to say security is not a big deal. It definitely is, but you can set things up properly is what I'm saying.
Right, just all about setting the proper expectations.
Absolutely.
And then as we proceed here, we have the benefits of UCaaS. Just touching on a few things with do more with less, save time, increase productivity, empower our teams, stay connected. I mean, are these all things that you see are benefits to your clientele today, or is there some things that stick out in your mind that your clientele really sees as a benefit with migrating over to a hosted voice solution?
Yeah, so few things, and maybe they're obvious for everybody on the call, but I know for our clients, they're not always obvious. I'll give you a very good example. I've got one client that, and it hits every single one of these. I've got one client that emailed literally last night and said, hey, our office manager who you were working with all the time, he's in the process of rolling out 400 sites, and they're all across the United States. And she said, hey, unfortunately, he quit this morning. I wanted to let you know he quit. And my response, my project manager replied back and said, hey, that's perfectly fine. We'll keep moving. We hate that, but we'll keep moving. And in the meantime, make sure you tell all of your people to forward all their requests, their issues with call flow or resetting voicemail pins or whatever, just forward it to our team here at ComTech. So think about that from their perspective of when they're spinning up sites, because they're spinning up sites constantly. They don't have to request a truck from AT&T or Spectrum or whoever. They just send an email saying, I need these phones, these phone numbers, and they need to be here on this day because we're going to plug them up. There's that. It's very productive as far as we give them the portal. They can log in. They can multiple members of their team in case one of them quits. They can do things like that. So it's empowering their teams. It empowers our team too. Of course, our team can all log into the portal and make this super easy. And then, of course, the staying connected during a disaster. The reason why that company went with us was because they previously had on-premise PBXs, and they were trying to use VPNs and tie them all back together, and it just turns into a mess. And then if you're here in North Carolina, parts of North Carolina, we haven't gotten technologically updated yet. Let's put it that way, where our internet still stinks in some areas. So the internet may go out or the power may go out, that sort of thing. But if you have a hosted system like this, then it's the auto attendant, the voicemails, all of those things still don't go down. We have to educate our clients a lot on, if your phone system is down, your phones are down, that doesn't mean your phone system is down. It just means your phone doesn't work. Again, pull out your mobile app, and your clients, when they call in, they're still going to hear the auto attendant. They're still going to be able to leave a voicemail, whatever that may be.
Yeah, and that's very powerful. Especially if you're dealing with some of the larger providers out there, and then there's time involved with getting a hold of them or not getting back to you. If they can call you, you answer on the first couple rings, you have a project manager right on it. I mean, that would make me feel a lot more comfortable than taking a day or hours to get a hold of my provider. It would make me feel like I made the right choice. So I think that those are all great things to touch on. Just proceeding forward here, the white label advantage. I always like to say there's, and I obviously love your opinion on this, Ethan, is that, there's a plethora of reasons of why people may want to get into the white label business. But one, and to me is kind of clear cut, number one is owning the customer. So kind of just what we were just talking about, having them sign that piece of paper with their name on it, with your name on it, ComTech's name. No one honestly knows who SkySwitch is unless you decided you wanted to divulge that information. It's a great way to build a monthly recurring revenue. So if you're coming from, the competitors of the world, some agent models where you're getting some sort of stipend or some sort of commission, you're able to turn that into a monthly recurring revenue. And then, the profitability. So profitability usually ranges anywhere between 40 to 60%, give or take. It obviously depends on what geographical location you're in, what market you're in, and what you're including in that price. Would you agree? Are they some of the reasons why you decided to get into this business, Ethan?
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you that we used to install on-premise systems. We never installed and tried to create be a white label ourselves, not to that extent. But the reason why we did it is because, for all the reasons that you just said, but primarily there is a decent amount of complexity, and I'm probably saying that lightly, a decent amount of complexity in trying to host your own system and do it this way in scale. I mean, the big thing is scale there. And we just decided it makes a lot more sense to let somebody like SkySwitch handle all the data centers, handle all those certain things. And then one of the other things that we certainly look for is what you just said, Sean. And again, I see both sides, so I'm not downing the other side of the people who do it a different way. But for us, at least, we very much want the client to understand that it is ComTech's phone service. If we have to talk about SkySwitch, we would talk about them in the format of our data center. We've partnered with a data center to provide that back-end infrastructure, so we don't have to spend hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars on data centers all around the country and all of this. That's what allows us to keep our price where it's at and be competitive. But again, the point there is we keep and control the relationship with that client. Because in my opinion, one of the worst things that could possibly happen is if we change from that and we're almost a middleman to where we sell something that we really don't have a whole lot of control over, and then we have to hand the reins over to a third party. Versus now, where yes, we're in the middle, but at least we know, certain pieces are handled by a white label provider like SkySwitch, but I can handle all the front end support. I can customize it the way I want, and also, quite frankly, I can keep margins that I want versus just having a little small spiff or whatever it may be.
Yeah, exactly true. And it's, hey, at some point, I know we all have some sort of exit strategy, whether it's, a year from now or 20 years from now. But if they are your customers and you decided you want to exit the business and you want to, shop your business around for 3 or 4x or whatever the going rate is, you'll be able to demand that because they're all under your own name. I always say, pretty simply put, people, if a quick and easy way to explain who we are or what we do or how our partners, benefit from our relationship is using us as infrastructure as a service, software as a service, onboarding and ongoing training. There are really three major components that we bring to the table and, help you get to market and other ways. But, from a back end point of view, kind of the three major components that we bring to the table. And, I know you and I've been doing business for a while, Ethan, but what were some of the check boxes, or what were some of the things that you went through, some of the thought process that you went through when you were, looking for the right white label partner, the partner like SkySwitch, when you're out there doing your research? Because I know, you do a lot of research and you were vetting people out. And was there some things that you needed to see from that specific provider to give you confident that this is the one that I think we should move forward with?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing for sure would be, you have to have some basic features. You got to have your mobile app. You've got to have all the features with UCaaS in general, call recording, automatic call distribution, everything on here. You've got to have all the features. But I was thinking about this slide earlier when I was looking at it, and one of the things that's not on this slide that I wanted to mention was, I know reliability is up there. Obviously, we were checking reliability because you're relying on someone like SkySwitch. You're relying on that infrastructure as a service to be up all the time. Almost guaranteed it's got to be up. So there's that, of course, and the features. But another thing that I would say is, this is kind of hard, and I know we didn't put it on the slide because, or you guys didn't put it on the slide because it may sound a little quirky, but I'm going to say it anyway. I would say when you're looking for a white label provider, ask for as many references as you can, and then talk to those references and ask them. Obviously, every white label provider is going to send you the best references possible. That makes sense. But talk to them and ask them about the rest of the community that exists inside of that white label provider. And what I mean by that is, are there other resellers that you're going to work with that are out there around the country, that the community in general, what's the culture there? Are they actually willing to talk to each other? Or does all the resellers just like, hey, I never talked to another reseller and we're all in competition and that sort of thing? Technically, we all are in competition, but there is enough business out there for everyone. There really is. And it's good to have a white label provider that cultivates that culture to where you can send things out. I know for me, I can send an email out or something in Slack, that sort of thing. And within 5 minutes, I've got at least 20, 30 responses of, hey, this is how we're doing it. Hopefully this helps. Let me know if you need me to jump on a call. That kind of thing, it just, for me at least, it's nice. I feel like I'm not just sitting in, on my own island. But those are the things that I look for. One other thing that I look for when you're talking to those references is it's guaranteed things are going to go wrong. I just mentioned that, infrastructure as a service, you need really good, solid infrastructure, but things will go wrong. Somebody will push an update that they shouldn't have pushed or something crazy, whatever it is. As large as Microsoft is, that kind of thing, they have their fair share of problems, to say it lightly. When things go wrong, what happens? What's the communication like with your white label provider? That's one thing that, again, it's not on the slide, but I wanted to mention because that's one thing that we look for when we're talking to references. We say, when things happen, how often are they emailing? How often are they updating? What's the communication like? Because if you are like us, you're putting yourself in the middle between our client and someone like SkySwitch. My client doesn't know SkySwitch exists. I'm the only one they have to yell at. So I need to be able to say something. So having a good communication form of some sort when things go wrong, again, it shouldn't happen often, but when it does, we need to plan for the worst.
Yeah. Exactly. And just to add one thing to that, I always tell when I would talk to, back when I was selling, I was talking to prospects, is that, don't be scared to set your own scope. You're right. A lot of people say, yeah, hey, I can give you as many references as I want, but I think it should always pertain to the size of the prospect. Do you want a prospect that's relevant to you? They have X, you have 10 employees. Do you want me to find someone that does 10 employees, that does $3 million a year, and they're not located in, 50-mile radius of you? So, don't be scared to set the parameters that you want to speak with, so you don't have to worry about just being put in touch with the best and ones that are only going to give you the rah-rah chant. So that's one thing I've always tried to do, just to make it kind of on the same level playing field when they're having that conversation where the businesses are similar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you're talking with whoever you're talking with and you give them those specifications, again, if they're willing to say, yes, absolutely, I'll find this, this, and this, then that also tells you a lot about them. So.
Yeah, 100%. Which leads us to our next slide. And another question I had for you, Ethan, is now, are you vertical specific? Are you vertical agnostic? What's some of the ways, or one of the ways that you go to market? What's your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, so relatively agnostic on this. We do have certain industries that, for the way that we've designed our support, they don't work well for. Our vast majority of our clients are Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, something like that. We do have emergency line if they need it, but the majority of our clients are 8 to 5. So restaurants are not great for us. Now, I know a lot of other resellers that restaurants are great for, that sort of thing. But we do span across many verticals. We've got anything from local government, so police department, fire departments, to nonprofits, to CPAs, to financial firms, you just manufacturing. Phones are phones, UCaaS is UCaaS. Now, you can get very specific on those industries, and knowing your target audience per the slide there. If you have something that you want to particularly focus on, and there's enough of a market around you to do it, I say go all for it. I can tell you, we are certainly slimming down our market, Sean. We are trying to cast a little bit of a smaller net to get more specific types of clients. Again, not necessarily the restaurants or the people that operate their prime times are between 6 and 9 p.m. or something like that, because that's just not us. But yeah, vertical wise, we kind of go across the board.
And when you mentioned slimming that down, Ethan, is that because it'll enable you to be more of a pro in a specific vertical? So, there's our partners sell to all different verticals, and there's some that are just strictly vertical specific. I noticed the ones that are very vertical specific, they can come in and they can sell to car dealerships, and they know what CDK is, and they know all the different applications that car dealerships use, and all the different intricacies and features, functionalities, applications. So dealing with that type of person, I think, as a prospect might make somebody feel more comfortable. Is that the reason why you're trying to hone that in a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you want to be able to speak their language. And it really tells you a lot if you sit across from a client and they say, yes, we're a CPA office, and you're able to say, well, what are you using? Lacert? Are you using QuickBooks? Are you using this? You're able to list out all the top ones, and they're like, okay, this person understands me. Mm-hmm. That's the primary reason that we're trying to do that. And then on top of that, if you know who you're talking about, again, know your target audience, then you can talk about specific features and benefits that relate to their business, instead of doing what I would say a lot of salespeople do, which is just kind of show up and throw up. They just tell to you all about all kinds of features, and the person just gets bombarded. And especially if they're used to an old on-premise system that didn't have a tremendous amount of features, or maybe they even think about, maybe the thing did have a lot of features, but that person says, a phone's a phone. I don't care. I just want a phone. I just want it to ring this way. Then you don't want to throw a massive amount at them, because it's not going to land.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Understanding their needs, understanding their wants, and being able to fix a problem. I mean, to me, that's what sales is all about. Yeah, just kind of we'll put a little shine on SkySwitch for a second here. You know, SkySwitch is a next gen UCaaS provider that empowers MSPs, VARS, MSPs just like Ethan and ComTech. To brand their own UCaaS platform as their own. So basically, as we touched on, that you can leverage us on the back end, and then you can go out there and you can promote your own branded name on the front end with nobody knowing who we are unless you decided you wanted to divulge that information. As we kind of touched on a couple of these things, quick time to market, no capital outlay, the efficiencies that come with partnering with an inexperienced team. We've been in the business for a while. We can help you stay the competition, and we build and sustain business. So as I think I mentioned, leading into this presentation, our job isn't to only bring on new partners, it's to also help them grow. So whether it's vertical specific or hopping on calls to help them with a challenging sales call or whatever is needed. That's why I always refer to this as a true partnership. I mean, we're not generating any revenue by just bringing on partners that are incapable of going out and selling. Some people have that addressable audience out there and they can hit the ground running. Other people's need a little bit more assistance. So that's what we're here to help with. And Ethan, just I guess I know we're a little ahead of time here. I didn't know if you just wanted to kind of touch on maybe some of what your experience has been with SkySwitch. I think you've been here for about 5.5, maybe 5 years now. I think we started doing business, and I know you came from another provider, so I know you probably have a really good story to tell in regards to where you came and where you are today in regards to leveraging a platform like ours.
Yeah, so the big thing for us was we built up our MSP side of the business. And then we actually offered phones in a different fashion. I told you we used to do a little bit of on-premise PBXs. And then, long story short, we ended up getting out of it for a number of reasons. A lot of the manufacturers kind of discontinued the line that we were selling, that sort of thing. So we went looking for, and we're out of it for a number of years. But when we started looking for a partner, you really had two options. We could either try to build our own thing, or just leverage, like what you just said, Sean, leverage somebody like SkySwitch. And we chose to leverage somebody like SkySwitch because it just makes more sense for us. We thought that, again, I don't want any part of data centers trying to keep up with a switch, that sort of thing. I don't want any part of that. I would much rather be solving our clients' problems and being able to just simply resell it and push it in there and get that recurring revenue. I'm more focused on that MRR. To John's point earlier, I'm much more focused on the MRR there than I am on trying to build out my own infrastructure in that way. But I think I've already said everything, Sean, as far as I just can't recommend enough the community and the communication that I would say has to happen, and keeping your client, at least for me, I want to keep that relationship with my client so they go through me and they don't have any reason. It's not necessarily that I'm keeping SkySwitch or any data center from them. It's more of what they need to know is that we're providing the phone service. We're doing a very good job. And if there's a problem, we're going to fix it. But they know ComTech. They don't need to know anyone else. I keep that relationship with the client. And to my point earlier, again, keep the profitability as well, which is nice.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, I know, John, we're a little ahead of time here. I don't know if we wanted to open things up to any questions that anyone had, or.
Yeah, no, not good coverage, guys, for sure. And yeah, Ethan, you said a bunch of things just the past minute or two that resonated for me. And yes, we do have some some questions in the queue for us to get to. I wanted to add a couple of things quickly off the top that I've been thinking of listening to you guys. And one was this idea, I know you talked, Ethan, about not, wanting to be in the data center business, etc. But certainly for, maybe some larger customers who might have offices across the country or maybe throughout the Southeast or Northwest or whatever, maybe talk a little bit more. I think you guys addressed pretty well, the VoIP it doesn't have to be 100% carrier grade, but it's certainly good enough for the vast majority of use cases, presuming broadband is not a problem. But I want to talk more about that reliability piece. And the reason why I say this, certainly for many in the audience, you all know that, copper sunset is a thing, right? And the incumbents they're trying every way they can to get out of the copper business, stop supporting it. And of course, the price protections have been lifted, so they can charge almost whatever they want. So they're just going to make POTS more and more expensive. And frankly, it's becoming less and less reliable because they're not paying any attention to it. And they really don't want you using POTS anymore. So maybe speak a bit, guys, to, again, the under the covers stuff, but what makes the cloud-based, the UCaaS offering, to make people feel comfortable using it? Why is it going to be reliable enough and they shouldn't have to worry about it?
So Sean, you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead. If you want to hop in. I don't know if you're doing any POTS, so I figure I'll let you talk and I can hop in.
Yeah, so we are not. We're not doing any POTS. We're 100% VoIP now. It's all UCaaS, and when I say VoIP, it's not no on-prem system whatsoever. That's the way that we run it. And it's primarily the benefits that we talked about earlier, being able to move things around, people go home. There's all of those benefits. But to your point, John, as far as the reliability goes, I'm sure Sean or his engineers could speak to more of the very specifics, but I do know that someone like SkySwitch has multiple data centers. And when I say multiple, I mean more than 2 or 3. And they're strategically placed around the country. That way, if there is any sort of major power outage or anything like that, then all the calls automatically move over to the next data center. There isn't, no engineer has to flip a switch. There's nothing like that. So there's pieces like that that you get with a UCaaS platform that you don't get with your standard POTS line. And at least if you're like us here in North Carolina, we get half an inch of snow, and for some reason they close down the schools and everybody just quits working, and it's a mess. But what I mean by that is inclement weather can just completely wreck us here in North Carolina. And that sort of thing, massive power outages, that doesn't play into the UCaaS piece, or it plays perfectly into it in that if your phone system is hosted in another place and it's not local to you, then yes, you're running a risk. Your internet could go out. But as I talked about earlier, the reliability there, again, look at when you're choosing a white label provider, look at their reliability. What is their actual uptime? And if it's really good uptime, then you can see and talk to the other partners. You can see what their strategy is for when one data center goes down. It automatically flips over to another one, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as you know, Ethan, I mean, we have 4 data centers that are located across the U.S. We have one in Atlanta, Georgia. We have one in Dallas, Texas. We have one in Las Vegas, Nevada, and also New Jersey. So there's, 4 nodes, 4 instances in each one. They're all they'll all fail over to each other nodes as everything is replicated. So when it comes to stability, I mean, we're about as, knock on wood, we're about as stable can be. And, that is usually one of the biggest questions that come up during, the first, when we're first speaking with a prospect is, how many outages you have, what's the total time? And that is one where instead of just giving somebody statistics or rattling off different things, I would say if you would like to talk to one of our current partners, I'm sure they would be glad to tell you how their experience has been in regards to stability or in regards to support. Those things I think are better left suited for partners instead of to hear it from anyone, especially from SkySwitch, hearing it from one of our partners. I just think it resonates more.
Okay. One of our listeners or attendees, Jeff, has given us a question that kind of anticipated what we were just talking about now. When we talk about service reliability, and particularly with, as you mentioned, Ethan, inclement weather, I don't know if there's any section of the country that hasn't been affected by some variation of climate change. It's just becoming a fact of life now. But with that, yes, there's uptime, but there's also when emergency services are needed. So let's talk a bit about how do you support 911, E911. As you know, the regulations are very inconsistent state by state. Again, if you have a multi-region coverage of a customer, how do you support that?
Yeah, so at least with our system, it's relatively simple. You're going to put inside of the provisioning portal, when you're in the portal, you're going to say per device where that device is located. And you do it, there's a number of ways to do it, but you do it, and when they pick up that phone and they call 911, it's going to carry what we have put on there and tell them what the address is. Now, of course, if they're going to ask, the 911 responder is going to ask, is this your address, what I'm seeing on there? And to your point, John, you absolutely can get in some trouble if they don't have the right address. The regulations have changed quite a bit on that in the last 2 years. But there is a way to say per device or per location, this is exactly where it's at. And you can also do some very, very neat things, like when they pick up the phone and call 911, it can automatically conference in the receptionist and that sort of thing. So at least if you have a very large manufacturing plant or something like that, where they pick up the phone, if the emergency responders walk in the front door in the lobby, when the person in the back called 911, the receptionist rang and they lifted and they could hear the call. So that way they know exactly where to tell the emergency responders where to go. So the system, it's built into there to show them where that is. And of course, if you're on the mobile app, it's going to use your cell phone location. You don't have to tie it to a certain location.
Yeah, there's a few more questions coming along this topic that are a little more granular, and I don't know if you can speak to them, guys, but you just touched on one of them there, Ethan, about mobile. So one question was regarding GPS coordinates. Can you use those? And also, are you integrated with any 911 entities? So just a little bit more detail on that, and then we'll move on to some other things.
GPS coordinates, yes. Red Sky or any other 911 entity. Yeah, Red Sky, I'm not too sure. I'd have to look into that one. I'm not positive, but GPS coordinates, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Now, so far, guys, we've been talking about UCaaS, as a service. Again, this is a change from Prem, where the solution was really more about hardware than software, right? But let's talk about the hardware side of things, because we got to have endpoints in this game too. So maybe talk a little bit about the types of endpoints that you do or do not support, and they could be not just phones, but they could be, there obviously could be video endpoints. It could be mobile integrations. Just speak a bit to that. So, obviously most businesses have a mix even within their phones, right? They may have 3 or 4 vendors on site. So let's talk about that a little bit.
So I'll take the first part here, Sean, and I'll say that for us, I mentioned a couple of times we got out of the phone business at one point. And the primary reason is because we were selling a vendor, the vendor got bought, then they said we're not going to touch anything. 6 months later, they announced that they were completely doing away with that whole telephony division. And I had a bunch of clients who were sitting there holding equipment that I had just sold them. And now, yes, it was working, but when you want another phone, go to eBay. So that doesn't work. That's one of the reasons why we got out. But when we looked for a white label provider, we wanted a generic SIP the system needs to work with generic SIP protocols. It needs to be, I don't care if it's Yealink, I don't care if it's Polycom, Grandstream, it doesn't matter what vendor. That way, if any of them go bankrupt or anything or have a security flaw, I can switch. And that also goes for, to your point, John, that goes to paging speakers, that goes to door boxes, all of these things, as long as they're basic, they use basic SIP protocols, you can use them with no problem if you pick the right provider. And I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I'm sure a lot of white label providers, or the vast majority, are going to support SIP. I would assume.
Yeah, they have to, and they've got to be, I would think, pretty agnostic, right? I mean, as long as your phones can handle it or your endpoints. Yep. Are you seeing much demand for video, guys?
That'd be probably better for you, Ethan. Question. I know some of our partners are leveraging it, but it's I think it's sporadic.
Yeah, I would say it's sporadic. It's definitely sporadic. If they're going to use it, most of them, from what I have seen, are going to use something like Teams or Zoom, and it's primarily because they already have it. They already have it inside of their business, and their users are just used to it, so they use it. But internally, for sure. Internally, I mean, currently we use Teams all the time. We use it constantly, especially as everybody goes into that hybrid type model I was talking about, where they're working a few days in the office and a few days at home, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Got a question here about geographic coverage. Particular, this one is about Canadian coverage, and guess what? I'm in Toronto, and we're working just fine on this call today, guys. This attendee, Ricardo, was asking particularly about Montreal. I'm in Toronto, but I think that's the bigger question of cross-border. Again, you got business customers who have business in both countries. Any issues there?
None at all. We probably have about 50 partners up in Canada, so zero issues at all. We don't currently have a POP or data center located up in Canada, but knock on wood, hopefully that's something to come. That base is growing up there. When I started about 5 years ago, I think we had under 10. So we're probably around in that 40 to 50, probably bring on one a month, I would say, at least. So it's definitely in an area that we're growing in, and no issues.
Okay. All right. We, at the top, I talked a little bit about how, cloud and then UCaaS sets your customers up to start adopting, newer technologies, applications, etc. We're talking a lot about phones here, and you could easily say, "Oh, desk phone is dead." What do you think? You're still seeing demand for desktop phones, but you're also seeing a rise in dependence on mobility too, right? So maybe how do you kind of do you lead the customer, or you just go with whatever they're doing?
Yeah, so obviously it's a mixed answer. I would say that here, especially in North Carolina, we still see a ton of desk phones. The vast majority of people are still using desk phones at the office. Now, once they go home, it's a different story. They want to be able to open up a web browser. They want to be able to open up a desktop app, that sort of thing, and have no problems there. But the desk phone, for anyone who says the desk phone is dead, I disagree. It's because of usability. I mean, everybody knows how to use one. And on top of that, especially for someone like a receptionist, that kind of thing, it's just simply easier to have it separate. It's not on their monitors, that sort of thing. Now, there's obviously exceptions. We've got a lot of clients that are using a desktop type app, and it works fine. But the vast majority of our clients are still sticking with a desk phone, at least as their primary means. And then when they step away from the office, they use the other means.
Agree. Yeah, and it's people hate to a change. So if somebody's been using a phone for the last 20 years and they like to go into the office and have that physical phone sitting there, then providers like ComTech can provide the phone on the desk, or if they want to have a saw phone. So I think it really just boils down to what the customer's needs and wants are, and be able to, address both their needs and their wants, whether it's a saw phone or a physical phone.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So for us here on the call, I have to say that, cloud, UCaaS are pretty first nature, but a lot of partners you're trying to bring on, right, might be new to this stuff, and they're pretty old school about, they understand, hardware, they understand desk phones, they understand wiring and cabling and everything that goes with that, switches and stuff. Now you're pushing them into a space where they don't have to worry so much about that. How do you get them comfortable, excited about this transition?
You want to go first, Ethan?
Sure,
you
Ethan.
go first. You go first on that one, Sean. I've been answering a lot.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, hey, you're forward facing, so we're channel facing, so it's a little bit different. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there's a I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. What was the question again?
Well, getting them comfortable. If they're old school telephony guys, and you're selling, say, hey, we're selling software now, we're not selling hardware, and they might find it, the learning curve, they might be intimidated by it. They say, oh, I like what I do. How do you get them on board with this to see what you're bringing?
I think it's important to listen to your customers, because that's the biggest thing. Because I think back in the day, there was the people that wanted to just stay with the on-prem systems, and they fought against the hosted. And I never really understood that, because it's really all boils down to what the customer's needs and wants are, right? I used to own a video game store, and the biggest question used to be, what's better, Xbox or PlayStation 4 or PlayStation? And my answer was, what are you looking for? What are you looking for as a video game that's looking to purchase a console? What are you looking for? Are you looking for, a free monthly with no monthly cost? Well, then you might want to go a PlayStation. Are you looking for a specific game like Halo? Then you might want to go with Xbox. So I think it boils down to what the customer's needs or wants are, and what flexibility you can bring to their table, but not, I don't want to make the decision for them. I want to ask them what they're looking for.
Well, one thing I'll add to that as well is I still talk to a number of potential resellers, and I say that primarily because we're trying to acquire them, because they are the traditional on-prem. They're selling the POTS lines, whatever it may be, and I get it, but I would just say what changed our mind on it was simply it clearly was the recurring revenue. It's just that you can make a decent amount more over the long run. Now, in the short run, yes, you're not selling that expensive PBX, that sort of thing. But in the long run, the client becomes very, very sticky to you. And obviously, you have to perform. You have to do a great job. But the client becomes very sticky and pays that recurring revenue, which is very, very nice.
Which we saw was huge come the pandemic, right? I mean, if you're out there and you're just installing prem-based systems and that just disappeared, you're in trouble. If you're out there and you have a monthly recurring revenue set up, I don't know how much has changed. And maybe some late payers or some businesses closing up, but that's mailbox money. It's set up to be mailbox money.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. All right, guys, we're coming up to time now. So I'm just going to ask each of you maybe to make a final comment to the audience about what they should be thinking about as we evaluate the opportunity here for UCaaS.
Yeah, I'll go first here. So I think a lot of it boils down to asking the right questions if you're looking to get into this space. And as Ethan and I both alluded to, is speaking with those references. Come up with a scope of a specific type of partner you'd like to speak with. As I mentioned, is it 10 employees? Is it $2 million a year? Is it in a certain geographical location? That way you can dictate the type of the partner that you want to speak with, and you won't be given the top 2 or 3 partners that partner's that provider is looking to give you. So I think that's very important as you go through and you're looking to evaluate these different providers out there, is that, set those scopes, set those parameters yourself so that you can dictate the type of partners you'd like to speak with.
Okay, Ethan, you got the last word.
Yeah, I think my final thing would be, if you're on the call and you're considering whether or not to sell UCaaS, I guess my final thing would be, look to everything Sean said and everything we've talked about on this webinar to pick the correct partner. But I would certainly urge you to do it, because it's not as difficult as it seems. It can be overwhelming with all of everything we've talked about with security and features and reliability and all of these things. Again, that's why you pick a good partner that helps with a lot of these things. And I can't urge you enough to definitely do it. I would certainly say do it as soon as you possibly can, because the recurring revenue makes life a lot better. It really does.
Okay, well said. Okay, so with that, we have hit time. So I want to thank our speakers here today, of course, Ethan and Sean, and myself, John Arnold, thanking you all for attending. Lots of good questions here, and we hope you found this informative, and you know how to find these guys if you need them. So thank you all for attending, and I guess it's time we sign off now. Thank you all again.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank y'all. Have a good one.